First off, I want to welcome you here, John. Thanks again for coming back. I don't know how many times this is, but we regularly check in, talk a little bit about what's going on in Valpo, talk a little bit what might be happening beyond Valpo. Recently, you had the community conversations event over at VU, and you were particularly stressful on, or particularly focused on civility, decency, how we communicate, how groups work together. Why is that so important to you right now?
Well, thanks, Chris. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I want to thank you for making your life's work to promote positive news that really build up communities. And you've done so much here in Valpo. And so thanks for this opportunity. You know, this was our first community conference, and it was great because it was sold out. Maggie Clifton was the director that did a super job here. And I was the main speaker at that. And the title for my speech was Civility: The Pathway to Progress in Local Government. And so I talked about how important local government is to your life. And in reality, it impacts your life more than the state and national governments do on a daily basis. You know, we're picking up your trash, we're giving you clean water, we're making sure you're safe, all those things that touch your life every day. And that's why it's important to have local government that is effective and working really well. And so I talked about what civility is, and it's really sort of like the oil that's in your car engine, okay? The oil keeps the friction down. And without the oil, things would just burn up real quick. And it allows all the different parts to work together in harmony. And really, civility is about that. And so that's why it's so important to having effective local government. And I talked about how civility has declined in the U.S. so much over the last several decades. There was an article by David Brooks, a New York Times columnist, and it was entitled, "Why is America So Mean?" And his takeaway was we just need really to focus back on basic civility, how to treat each other with kindness, with understanding. And there were a few other articles. And then there was a 2021 Pew Research study that found that 41% of Americans reported being harassed online. And so we really need to focus in on that, particularly in local government. You know, sometimes we look to the national government, and they're fighting all the time. They don't seem to get much done. And we think that's a model for local government. It is not. We have to sit across the table in a spirit of trust and work together to move our city forward. And so I think that's so important. So when I spoke, I defined civility, and this is really from things that I've read. I kind of cobbled together a definition that I think is really helpful. And it says that civility defined as the practice of engaging in public discourse that is respectful, constructive, and invites differing viewpoints. And so I've always said, when we have a good process, we'll get a good result. Okay, but we've got to have a process that is constructive, respectful, and invites differing viewpoints. And so that's what I've tried to do all along. It's harder to do these days for various reasons, but that's one of the first thing I want to chat with you here today about.
And let me ask you sort of a leading question. Can we get back to civility?
Well, I think, you know, it's like anything.
I'm obviously a big fan.
Yeah.
I like positive stuff. I like, and not just a Pollyannish view of positive. I just listened to my mom when I was in second grade, and she says, be nice to people. Don't say mean things. Don't call people names. Don't do anything that you wouldn't want somebody else to do to you. And if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything at all.
Well, it's, and civility is more than politeness. Okay, let's get beyond it. And so what I talked about is, we will value civility more and try to model it better if we understand the underlying beliefs in it. And there are many, but there are four that I talked about. One is just the dignity of personhood. Every person has the right to be heard and understood. And so when we're uncivil, we're really denying ourselves personhood in a sense. We want to lift up people. We want to make sure every person has dignity. So that's one of the underlying values. The other is the dignity of democracy. Okay, democracy and its institutions. When we show respect for local government, for other institutions, such as our schools and our churches and our many forms of government. When we do that, we're really building up our system of democracy, because that's the system that serves us. It's the institutions of government that serves us. The third is just what I call intellectual humility. There's a lot of opinions out there these days, and we all got them. Okay, but I think it's important to know that we can hold on tightly to our core convictions, but at the same time hold our many opinions loosely. And we need to be open to learning. There's a great book called Think Again that challenges us to rethink many of our opinions, because sometimes they don't have great, strong bases. And so having an open mind and really listening to others is important. And then finally, I talk about this concept of grace. Grace is simply unmerited favor. It means when somebody treats you poorly, you just let it brush off your shoulder, and you just allow people to at times behave badly, because we all do, but you show them grace, you show them kindness, and you don't try you don't extend incivility for incivility. So we just need more grace and kindness in our world. So I think if we really focus on those core beliefs and say that's why we believe in civility, that's why we believe in having a good process, because a good process will yield the best results for our city.
And you've seen, obviously, examples where folks don't get along, but you've also seen hundreds, if not thousands, of examples through all years where people of different viewpoints actually do get along and work together on things.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. I'm not saying civility is dead. I'm just saying you have to understand there are certain things that are pushing back and making it harder to be more civil. And I listed 10 of them in my talk. And I think it's important to understand these and how they impact us. I just want to quickly list some of these. Cable news channels, okay? The main networks are designed to get you upset and mad at the other side, the people watching the other network. We need to understand that. This is entertainment for the most part, not necessarily news. And so we need to kind of tame what some have called the media rage machine. Social media, the vitriol and anonymity on social media. You can read a post and you get it from your friend and you trust your friend, but who knows who wrote the post? And there are a lot of people in our community that don't even use their real names and are writing posts, and their intentions aren't that good. They're either very partisan or they're very negative. And those people in person might not be very persuasive. But when they post a bunch of stuff on social media and then you get it third or fourth generation and you get it from a friend, you think it's true. Well, it may be the opposite. So we really need to be careful about social media. Other things, reduced respect for all major institutions is one. Algorithms. Algorithms are keeping us buried in our own silos. We need to break through from our own silos. We need to have friends from the opposite political party. I've got a number of close friends that are Democrats, and we have great discussions. So there are many things that are pushing us away from civility, and we really have to realize what they are and push back against them.
Well, that whole thread is sort of up my alley, because I'm not pro only positive or pro only negative. I just like to focus on the positive. You've had, obviously, that spirit has been incredibly challenged, probably, let's say, in the last month. When you get to some of those projects that folks might have had contention with, what keeps you, and this is a sort of off the cuff question, but what keeps you calm? I've watched those city council meetings, which can be slightly tough. What keeps you calm?
Well, first of all, my faith as a Christian challenges me because it says that we cannot retaliate, that we have to treat people with respect. It's hard sometimes, but I'm really trying, and I know that's the truth. So I have to constantly remind myself of the things that Jesus said, and he says that if you're treated poorly, you're not to retaliate and treat others poorly. So. The other thing is this: as the mayor of the city, it's really important that I set a good example. Again, I don't always do that, but it's important, and so I need to be the one deflecting criticism. I need to be the one trying to create an atmosphere where constructive, respectful dialogue that invites differing opinions can happen. Okay, so creating the right culture is really the most important thing a leader can do, and so that's really the main goal, is to trying to do that. And it can be very painful at times when people are unkind to you and assume bad motives and say things that simply aren't true. You just have to learn to let that go and realize that you live before an audience of one. You're not going to make everybody happy. And here's the other thing. We've all said things that we don't even believe the next day. Okay, we've all done that. I'm guilty. When I think to myself and I kick myself, why did I say that? Or I don't even believe that about that person. And so I think just giving people the grace and saying, well, maybe they had a really bad day, or maybe they got some bad news, or maybe they're just, I don't know. But, they may wake up the next day and not even believe what they said. I've done it many times. So again, extending that grace in those circumstances is important.
It's good advice. And I think what you're talking about applies to city council meetings, county council meetings, school board meetings, public communication, office communication, your home life, your community life, your neighborhood. We could all take a step back and just take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, extend grace.
Yeah.
We need that, because it's a tough world sometimes. I mean, and so when somebody, and the beautiful thing about grace is, I says it's costly yet powerful. Costly in the sense that you can't retaliate, which is our normal, that you need to absorb some painful things and be silent, even when it may not be just at the time. But it's powerful in the sense that it can change the tenor of the room in a minute when you don't retaliate and you show grace, and then people will pick up on that. And so I think, it's hard.
You got to be
if we talk
resilient
about
as heck.
But if we're talking about these things and we're encouraging each other to do these things, I think we can all do more of it. And I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm preaching to myself first, okay? Because there are times I certainly don't live up to this, but I do aspire to that because it's important, and I know it's best for the community.
You think about some of the recent projects that have come into discussion. First one I'll talk about is the Central Park Event Center. Why, some people say, oh my God, that's a terrible idea. Oh my gosh, that's the greatest idea ever. What's the genesis of the concept?
Okay. Well, first, what I want to talk
let's
about
go back to the beginning.
I do. I think it's important to look at that in depth here because it is a very sacred place in a sense for the community, and that's part of why they reacted so strongly. What concerns me about what happened with the data center and what's happened with Central Park Plaza is we haven't gotten to the point where we can talk about this idea. These ideas were at their infancy. And personally, I don't know if something's a great idea until it's explored. But we need to be able to explore it. And once it's explored, often ideas change. And they always evolve to a better project. But it's about having that process where an idea can come out in its infancy stages, and both of those were just ideas. And so that's my concern, is like we need to be able to get to the point where we say, okay, how do we address this issue? What's the best process? Where do we get good information? And then begin that process again. That is constructive, respectful, and invites differing opinions. And then when all that happens, I think it'll be pretty clear what's a good idea and what's right for Valparaiso. Now let's talk about the Central Park Plaza. And as I said before, again, the emotions ran high, and I get that. It's a special place. Now, in fairness to me, when I took over, there was no downtown. Okay, it was pretty dead. The big boxes had drained the life away, and we knew that we had to remake the downtown. And it took decades to do that. There was no Central Park Plaza. Both the Central Park Plaza and the Urshel Pavilion were built under my administration. So I have been the architect of the downtown. The last thing I want to do is destroy it, okay? But we've done very well in the sense that we've been very successful. But it has to continue to evolve. You can't just stop. And people have different views on how it should evolve, whether it should have high density housing. That was always part of the plan. But a year ago, and I've thought this for a while, is I thought that the challenge with Central Park Plaza is that it's cold here about 6 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so beautiful in the summer. And there's no real indoor event space where on a cold day in January, somebody can come down and rather than spend 5 minutes outside and have to go home, they can go to an event area that has tables and chairs, maybe get a beverage and hang out with their friends and just look out at the park. Maybe there would be a museum exhibit there, maybe a Creative Arts Council exhibit, maybe there would be a short presentation from a Memorial Opera House event. But in any event, we need a place where we can gather and use the park more year round. That's critical. That's one of the things that's missing. The other thing that I think is really important is to have a veterans memorial there, a really nice veterans memorial honoring our veterans who have fought and defended our democracy and also our first responders. So those were the key components of that. And there was also a playground. But so here's the challenge. So I've been thinking about this for a while. But it's hard to discuss something in a totally abstract situation. So I knew in order to have discussions, we would have to have some preliminary concept working with an engineering firm. And so, because otherwise, what are we talking about? Just it's so abstract. And so the first thing I did was engage with the primary landowner who has been a friend of our families for 60 years because our parents were friends. And I said, I want to embark on this idea, but I want you to know it and I want you to feel comfortable. And so once we had that understanding, then I engaged a firm to come up with a preliminary concept. And I think they did a really great job. But it helped us to determine whether or not this is an idea even worth pursuing.
Whether this idea has legs.
Yes, because maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. I don't know. But I knew enough, having been, the person who helped create the downtown as it is, that there was something missing. And I believe that it could be more than a good idea. I believe it could be a transformative idea, okay? If it can happen. I don't know if it can happen. I don't know if we can raise the money to make it happen. I don't know if we can come to terms with the landowners because that's an important part of it. But in any event, it's very hard to keep things, a secret for very long. You can't. Confidentiality is very difficult in today's world, and so eventually this leaked out, and a lot of opinion about how it came down came out, and it was unfortunately it was not as constructive as I'd like it to see. And I would never. Now, understand this, we bought many buildings to remake the downtown. I don't think we ever used eminent domain in any of those buildings. We always worked to negotiate with the building owners. And my experience has been they're all happy when they get their check because through the process, we determine the valuation and then, they typically been very happy. I've rarely used eminent domain. We never, in all my negotiations with the two landowners, I would never use the word. I understand they know that the city has that power, but we don't abuse that. We always work to negotiate. And the goal here was simply to get an evaluation so that we could determine what the value of this project is, because we would have to buy those buildings at the fair market value. So we had this understanding with the landowners. I had met with them personally, the larger landowner 3 times personally, and we were working on a process for determining that. And I had showed them both landowners, the initial rendition, so they had a feel for what this could look like. And I think what happened is when it blows up on social media, that it was hard on them too, and I get that. But I think, in fairness to myself and my administration, if you look at how I've led over the last 20 years and how we have used a negotiation to transform the downtown, threatening people with eminent domain is not in my vocabulary, and it never happened, and it never will. Now, I will be persuasive. I'm trying to help them to see that this is possibly a transformative project for the entire city for generations. And I'm helping, and I've made it very clear, I don't expect either one of them to make $1 of sacrifice to this project, that they should be paid full measure, full appraised and fair market value price if they want to participate. And that was made very clear, okay? But again, this thing sort of blew up, and from their standpoint, I'm sure that it was hard on them too because of that. And I have already reached out to, again, the main landowner here, and I will do so with the other, to say, okay, let's regroup and make sure we're on the same page, because with the main landowner, our fathers were close friends. My son is a good friend with him, and they play golf together. And to think that having a 60-year relationship with this family, I would threaten them with eminent domain is just, to me, not fair and bordering on absurd, actually. So that was painful for them, painful for us. But as leaders, you're going to take some arrows. And that it's, to some degree, it's the price of leadership. Where I think we need to push back is understanding that as a local government, we have to be able to explore issues in a constructive, a responsible, and in a manner that invites differing viewpoints, but has a good process. And I think we should continue to do that with this idea. And I think we should revisit whether or not a data center even makes sense for Valparaiso. Now, we don't have any projects, and I'm just saying we never had that opportunity. At that council meeting, many showed up, and I get they were upset, but we didn't have an exchange of information. I tried to explain some things and was shouted down, but we listened to them until they were done, okay? So maybe not our best night. We can do better. We will do better. And we're trying to also work as a city on better ways to communicate, because these are complex issues. You can't throw out sound bites. It's easier to be negative with sound bites, but to explain processes and opportunities and all the different meetings that would have to happen before a project begins to take root is hard to do in sound bites.
One conclusion that was jumped to very quickly is, gosh, why didn't Jon go to Old World Market and help them through this process? That individual owner is gigantically at risk, all the kind of things that I think bring out a lot of sympathy.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I'm a small business owner. I'm doing everything I possibly can. Oh my gosh. Why can't the city go out and talk to every single one of those people?
So the city cannot do that because they're tenants of another person. And we had an understanding that we wouldn't talk with their tenants because we value these small businesses. I'm a small business owner. I've been a small business owner for 50 years. 47, but I'm just saying.
A whole bunch.
And Old World Market is awesome. We use them for our leadership team meetings. They're a tremendous, and so we can't do that. But here's the thing. Part of buying buildings is relocating the tenants, okay, to a place, helping them with relocating. So this would become part of a process. Now, maybe that process wouldn't work, but we have always taken pains to relocate tenants. And for some, it's a great opportunity because they may need more space. and we can help with the cost of it. There's lots of things that we can do in the process. And so we were looking forward to that opportunity. It's a difficult situation because it we can't talk to the tenants and the landowners. It's hard for them to talk to the tenants. And
They probably don't want to
unfortunately,
scare the
yeah,
tenant because they don't
right.
know if there's anything to scare them about.
Exactly. It's sometimes there's just no easy way for an idea to come out. And in this case, I'm sorry, for the angst that it's caused other people. We don't want that to happen. But if you look at our history, Chris, you would see that every time we bought a building, if there's tenants in it, we always use city resources and help them to relocate, to defray the expenses so that they come out whole. Because the last thing we want to do is for Old World Market not to be there. I mean, they're a great partner. We'd like to see them be able to expand someday, and I think they want to do that too. But so we are precluded from talking with them, so we couldn't. Tough situation. But at this point, if this were ever to move forward, clearly the taking care of the tenants and making sure that their relocation works really well for them would be a big part of this plan.
One has to wonder, when you came back into public life after just an incredible run, oh my God, what is he coming back to? Why is he doing this again? Is he crazy? He's getting back into public life and it's so challenging. Why come back when you knew this environment might be out there?
Well, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I love the city, and I'm happy doing whatever I'm doing. I mean, I was very busy for those 4 years. Finished a few degrees, took a position at the church, and I love leadership in its many forms. I just want to be a useful person. And when Mayor Murphy decided not to run, I thought, okay, I can step into this. It's not the same as it used to be because for a lot of reasons in terms of leading. But I just, and I felt there were other things that we can do to strengthen the city. So for me, it's just about trying to be useful with the skills and talents and experiences I have. And I've provided leadership in every sector of our city. I've provided it in higher education, and I was on the school board and on the Higher Education Commission for many years. In the faith community, I've been elder chair of a large congregation in town. I've worked on nonprofits. I've been involved as a small business owner in the business community and in government. Those are the main sectors, and so I felt that that I could be useful, and so that's why I came back, and we've got a lot of great projects happening. Whether it be the Regal Beloit transformation, the Replay initiative. I mean, there's a lot of cool things happening, and the city has a great future. But you can never stay the same, Chris. You always have to be reaching forward, and change is hard. Okay, change is hard on all of us. Change is harder on some people than other. And somebody once said that leadership is the art of managing disappointment. And that's because disappointment can create angst. It can create feelings of fear and loss. And I get that. And that's what we're trying to deal with as leaders, to help people to see that we need to keep reaching forward. We need to we need to have a good process, a constructive process for exploring new ideas and seeing if they're right for the city of Valparaiso. I believe if we have a good process, it'll become clear to virtually everybody. But the other thing about leadership too is, it's like my friend Stu McMillan always says, I thought, the skating idea, the pavilion was a dumb idea, and he's a very innovative guy. So he's a change agent. And as soon as it was completed, he realized, that I mean, sometimes we do have to trust those who have a record of success. I mean, I haven't bat 1,000, but we've had quite a bit of success in bringing the city forward and making it a special place. And sometimes it might take a little bit of faith to say, well, let's at least explore this idea and give it a shake. And I think again, that's what we're trying to do in today's environment, and I believe we can do it together.
I remember back when the plans first came out for Central Park Plaza, And I do remember in the nascent days of social media where there's quite a few that wanted to punch you in the face for possibly thinking of wrecking their downtown by putting such a big park right in the middle of the city. And then to see how that's transpired, and then thus all the other development that's transpired, thus journeyman development that's transpiring, and the Grand Gardner development that's transpiring now. I think you could be given a little bit of grace, maybe in your words, for thinking, hey, I've done pretty good here. I'd like to continue to do better. And out of that whole process, what do you think you learned?
Well, I think, I'm still learning through this process. I'm still processing it. I think there's a sense of humility. It's like it's a balance. It's saying I have an idea that I think is a good idea, but we need to explore it and get more input to make sure it's a good idea. For instance, to Regal Beloit, it was our last major industrial site right in the heart of town that was empty. Okay, we had to do something with it. And so, coming up, we're still coming up with what exactly it's going to look like because we needed lots of input. What's missing in the community? What do we need that's indoors? What can we add without duplication to what the Y is doing? But all this is coming into this concept that is taking shape and will take shape over the next year. And as we build it over the next several years, it'll become a very, very special place for our community. So again, getting back, just fighting to have a good process so that the positives, the negatives, the opportunities, the threats that every project brings can be explored, and again, the cream will rise to the top. So that's what I'm learning more. That's such an important process to engage in and to expect.
Take it outside of Valpo. What would be your guidance to others that are communicating online, going to school board meetings, trying to have an impact in local or county government? How do they do that with decency?
Well, that gets back to this whole thing of civility. Again, it's not that we don't express any civility. We do, but we need to understand there are a lot of forces, and I'm gonna and of all the forces I named, I think what we have to really understand, and I gave 10 of those, and I mentioned some of those like social media algorithms, but I said there's a bonus 11, and it may not be a bonus to half the people here, but right now, there's a lot of disruption happening in Washington, D.C., and a lot of people are upset about that. And I understand that. I get that. I've got family members upset about it. There's a lot of unknown there, and it's hit people in the pocketbook. Maybe this will turn out well. I don't have but I don't understand national politics. I've always been involved in local politics. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's the government that affects your life more so. But the reality is this, that angst has trickled, no, it's cascaded down to us. And that's a reality. That's one of the reasons why it's so hard to govern right now, is because some people think if I have an R after my name, I'm
Evil.
and other people think that if I have an R after my name, I can't make any mistakes, which is wrong too. Okay. This is local government. This is neighborhoods. This is us passing each other in the street. This is us at school board meetings. This is us at Little League games, okay? We need to be able to treat each other with respect and realize that all that nonsense that goes on at the national level has no place here, okay? We need to fight for that neighborly grace, for understanding, for listening to each other, and realizing that if we do that, we'll continue to build an awesome city, a city where our kids want to come back to after they've done the big city thing and raised their families, where taxes are reasonable, where schools are awesome, and where we're just proud to show our neighbors come to visit what an awesome city we have.
Your mouth to God's ears and to everybody listening on the civility point. We've sort of made that our focus for these years. And I do think leaders that are in the middle need to stand up and speak like they're in the middle and not let the extremes take over the conversation. So, to the extent that we never really touch anything controversial or, challenging, I don't think anything about this is really that controversial. I think your message is let's talk. I'm not right. You're not wrong.
Let's
I
talk
just,
about
could we
ideas.
please
Yeah.
have a conversation rather
Yeah.
than a shouting match?
And I want to comment on, Senators, you talk about the reasonable middle, and that's really important. I call it the third party. Okay. And what I try to do as a leader is I try to elevate people who are in the third party. What's the third party? They're people who are reasonable, they have goodwill, and they understand that we need to work together in a spirit of trust to get things done. So let me give you a couple of examples. As leaders, we need to take risks to empower good people, even if they're of the different party, because it's local governments, not national government. I have 3 of 5 appointments to the Redevelopment Commission, arguably the most important commission in our city. So I control, okay? But I appointed as my third person a Democrat who had ran for mayor against my predecessor. But he's a good person and he's a capable person, and he can make fine independent decisions. So by doing that, I was trying to again elevate a person who I think belongs to the third party and who has a connection back to his local Democrats, so that they know that that we operate above board. Another example is Alison Quackenbush. I mean, she's a tremendous leader, and putting her as head of the the Human Relations Commission, she's been a tremendous help, and it's a volunteer. So those help me build bridges to that reasonable middle. The problem, we all understand, is the very vocal outliers. They're very vocal, and social media has amplified their voices. Why? Because of the anonymity of it all, and because again, in person, they probably wouldn't be that persuasive when we had to do it that way 50 years ago. But now, again, they do a post. Who knows who wrote it? Is it a real person? Is it not? We have to be really careful with that and go to the source. This is local government. You know, if you want to come by and have a meeting with me, I don't think I've really turned anybody down from doing that, or come to a chamber meeting, or come to a Kiwanis meeting where we're talking about good things happening. Let's continue to be great neighbors. Let's continue to listen to each other in a spirit of goodwill, and focus on face-to-face meetings across the table, and continue to build that great city that we're so proud of.
Well, thanks for coming over to talk about it. Thanks for continuing to work with us all these years, and communicating what is good about Valpo, and also just for reminding everybody, let's take a chill. Let's relax. Let's try to take a breath, and maybe remember some of those things our mom taught us in the second grade about communication.
You bet, Chris. And thank you for making it your life's work to tell positive, true local stories. I'm so grateful for your work here, and I wish you a lot of success.
Awesome. Well, thank you.